Welcome. Welcome to the third annual Roy L. Brooks Distinguished Lecture Series. We are so incredibly proud to sponsor this lecture, and we are happy to have you join us for this evening's program. When we started this series in 2023, we had no idea how popular this event would be. I am sure that even Professor Brooks could not have imagined the impact that the speakers would have both during their delivery and after their delivery. Dr. Derek R. Brooms, a sociologist and faculty member at Morehouse College, was our inaugural speaker. He talked about being Black and male on a Hispanic-serving college campus. He talked about just the experiences that people had, but also the types of support that people needed. Those who attended watched with delight as Professor Brooks beamed with pride as Dr. Brooms wove not only stories and statistics to talk about the importance, benefits, and rewards of serving the university's most vulnerable community of members. His talk was indeed the example of how a rising tide lifts all boats. Professor Brooks commented after that lecture that he didn't know how we would top that initial program. Dr. Renetta Garrison Tull was the inaugural Vice Chancellor for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at the University of California, Davis, and she was our second speaker in 2024. Dr. Garrison Tull, an electrical engineer, has made significant contributions in promoting diversity in STEM fields. She serves as the principal investigator for several large-scale mentoring and prep programs for non-traditional students in STEM programs. Dr. Garrison Tull is considered a humanitarian engineer because of the work that she does across the globe. If you were here last year, you watched Professor Brooks connect with Dr. Garrison Tull on her genuine love for students and on mentorship. Again, Dr. Brooks expressed appreciation for the quality of speakers that we brought to campus for a lecture series that bore his name. This year, I am incredibly proud to have Dr. Brooks talk about his own life and his legacy. As you may have heard, he has decided to retire after 47 years. You also possibly know that named lecture series are often done after a person is deceased. So we are incredibly proud to have Professor Brooks give this year's lecture. Now, some of the logistics. Many of you will say, well, I don't see the program. There are QR codes on your tables. Please feel free to use your cameras and pull the program up. We will also display a portion of the program on the screen. In the program book, you will see an incredibly short bio of Professor Brooks, his scholarship, and the impact that he has had not only on the law, but also on USD. Our hope is that you will take a few minutes and read that bio in its entirety, but that after today, you will reach out directly to Professor Brooks during the reception and share with him the impact that he has had on you. Whether this is the first time you've heard him, as our friend Isaiah will say, he is from another institution. He just happened to see this advertised on Instagram and he wants to go to law school. And he said, I want to be there, right? Or whether or not Professor Brooks has served as your mentor or your teacher, whether he has been one of your faculty colleagues, whether you've worked with him in a law firm, or you just know him personally or in some other capacity professionally. We don't always give people their flowers while they can smell them. Today, let's openly appreciate him. Can we give him a rousing round of applause now? Before we proceed with the program, I know that we have a number of people with us tonight who are not familiar with this building. If you need to go to the restroom, they are right outside these doors and to your right. We ask that you silence your phones, but if you need to make a call, please feel free, again, to walk out into the lobby. We welcome you to the University of San Diego. If this is your first time here, welcome. Please make a point of returning. We'd love to see you again. If you are a member of our community, we thank you for coming out with us tonight. We will proceed with the program as it is listed. And I'm sorry, I forgot to say, I'm Regina Dixon Reeves. I probably should have started with that. I am Vice Provost for Academic Excellence. I'm also the Director of the Center for Educational Excellence and the Center for Cultural Development. Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Dixon Reeves. I am Robert Shapiro, Dean of the University of San Diego School of Law, and it is a great honor to add my welcome as we celebrate my friend and colleague, Professor Roy Brooks, the Warren Distinguished Professor of Law. Now, Professor Brooks graduated from Yale Law School, where he served as an editor of the Yale Law Journal. After law school, he clerked for the Honorable Clifford Scott Green of the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania. He then began practicing law at the eminent firm of Cravath, Swaine, and Moore in New York City. He was well on his way to a very distinguished and lucrative career as a corporate lawyer. But then, 47 years ago, Sister Sally Fury, our provost and pioneer for social justice, made a fateful journey to New York. She traveled there personally to recruit Professor Brooks to the University of San Diego School of Law. She succeeded, and Professor Brooks became the first Black member of our faculty, a milestone that helped to transform our community. Woo! That's it. And what an impact Professor Brooks has had on the University of San Diego, on the Legal Academy, and on society. For nearly 5 decades, Professor Brooks has challenged minds and inspired hearts through his fearless teaching and groundbreaking scholarship in civil rights, jurisprudence, and human rights. Now, to the delight of generations of deans, he has taught a remarkable range of courses, including corporations, corporate finance, securities regulation, legal writing, and civil procedure. In recent years, his teaching has focused on jurisprudence, civil rights theory, international human rights, reparations, and discrimination law and diversity. A prolific and influential scholar, Professor Brooks has authored 24 books and more than 100 articles and chapters, work that has reshaped thinking in several fields, including social justice, legal theory, and democratic theory. Along the way, Professor Brooks has amassed a trove of well-deserved honors. He has twice been named University Professor, the university's highest academic honor. He was also awarded the USD Center for Educational Excellence's Freire and Hooks Decolonial Pedagogy Award. He has won the Virgil Hawkins Award, the Thurgood Marshall Award. And an extraordinary scholar and teacher, Professor Brooks has been awarded both the School of Law's Thorsness Prize for Outstanding Legal Scholarship and its Thorsness Prize for Outstanding Teacher. Indeed, he's received each of these prizes several times. A member of the American Law Institute and the Authors Guild, Professor Brooks has received numerous national book awards, including the Brandeis University Library Learned Research Journal Award and 2 recognitions of the Gustavus Myers Outstanding Book Award. Now, Professor Brooks's productivity remains extraordinary. 3 years ago, soon after I arrived here, I had the honor of moderating a discussion of Professor Brooks' recently published volume, Diversity Judgments, Democratizing Judicial Legitimacy. This elegant and powerful book argues that the legitimacy of judicial decision-making must be based in large part on its ability to make room for all Americans, to help make our society virtuous and stronger than the sum of its parts. He characterizes this approach by a phrase that might refer more generally to his work. He said his approach was at once familiar and radical. And then just 2 weeks ago, I received the report from Professor Brooks about his summer research project this past summer. For most faculty, these reports detail the substantial progress made on a scholarly article. What Professor Brooks submitted was the manuscript of his latest book, The Edifice of Justice, Redressing Slavery and Jim Crow, though we did note that Chapter 10 might need to be revised somewhat in light of pending legislation. Roy is also an extraordinary colleague. He is always warm and welcoming to everyone, to students and faculty alike. Roy is generous with his time and is a superb mentor and advisor. He is a man of many interests and talents, and through his infectious laugh, you become absorbed in whatever delights him. He can regale you with fascinating tales of his experiences, including discussions in the Yale Law School cafeteria with classmates, including Clarence Thomas, Hillary Rodham, and Bill Clinton, with Sam Alito sometimes looking on from a different table. And while Professor Brooks will be retiring at the end of this academic year, his indelible legacy will live on at the School of Law and in the community. Through his work and through all who knew him and had the opportunity to learn from him. Now, we are determined to keep alive and carry the mantle of social justice forward after Professor Brooks retires. In honor of Professor Brooks, an unwavering champion for civil rights, human dignity, and the pursuit of justice, we invite you to support the Roy L. Brooks Fund for Social Justice. And there is a card at your place to help you do so. This fund will sustain his legacy at USD School of Law by supporting visiting scholars, speakers, and faculty who share his bold vision that the rights of all people are not negotiable but self-evident truths. This fund will ensure that his work not only endures, but continues to spark change for generations to come. Thank you, Professor Brooks, for the enduring impact you have had and the contributions you have made to our law school, our university, and our society. Your light will continue to guide us.
Thank you, Vice Provost Dixon Reeves and Dean Shapiro. I am honored to be here this evening. My personal introduction to Professor Roy Brooks was a memorable one. He sent me an email shortly after my arrival in 2017 expressing his desire to meet with me. Now, this could have gone several different ways. He could have been the sage professor ready to tell me exactly how things are done at USD, and I would have been open to that. He could have been the renowned academic expert, emphasizing his stature and expecting me to recognize it as well. Having worked at universities for over 40 years, I am quite familiar with that approach. Or he could have been a quiet mentor, welcoming me and offering his support. Any or all of these would have been acceptable. He opted for the last one. Instead of lecturing, he wanted to tell me how happy he was that I was here, how much confidence he had in my leadership, and how I had the opportunity to make a difference. This was high praise from Professor Brooks, whose academic pedigree is world-class, whose impact is so expansive and incalculable, whose contributions, whose body of work is relevant, powerful, and so absolutely fearless. I was so impressed with Professor Brooks, his story, his scholarship, his authenticity, and his warmth. It is hard to articulate how much that meant to me. Someone like him, with his accomplishments, would see me as a leader and would be willing to support my leadership. I took his example to heart, and it helped me to greet other new leaders at USD. I reached out, offered support, and hopefully made the difference, Roy, that you thought I could. Rare people like Professor Brooks are why one would even bother to work in university administration, because you get to work with people of this caliber. I'm not sure I've lived up to your expectations, but his faith in me gave me plenty of motivation. Roy Brooks is a difference maker, and you'll hear much more about that this evening. One of those differences includes this wonderful lecture series. When we decided to move forward with the lecture, we recognized that it needed a name, a descriptor, something that would immediately impart prestige and quality that is inherent to the event. A name that would honor USD's past, our commitment to excellence in teaching, compassion for students, rigor, and exploration of important and challenging topics. We needed a name that would stand the test of time. So when Dr. Dixon Reeves was working on bringing this vision to fruition, we talked about what it should be called. The choice was not only not difficult, it was inevitable, it was obvious. Naming something after someone is a powerful gesture that acknowledges their impact and ensures that their legacy endures. It is a way to honor and recognize the individual's legacy, ensuring that their contributions are remembered and celebrated. A name can inspire others by highlighting the achievements and values of a person being honored. This can motivate people to strive for excellence and make meaningful contributions themselves. Naming something after someone helps preserve their memory and helps keep their story alive for future generations. For the person being honored and their loved ones, it creates a personal and emotional connection to the naming entity, whether it be a building, an award, or yes, a lecture series. It can add cultural and historic significance to the named entity, enriching its value and meaning within the community or society. And so with all of that, the Roy Brooks Lecture Series was born. Of all of my experiences at USD, meeting Roy remains a high watermark, a unique opportunity to work with someone who is so distinguished and who helped to shape so many of our educators and scholars today. We are eternally grateful, Roy, that you shared your time and treasure with the University of San Diego and this community. There is no other name more befitting than Roy's for this lecture series. Thank you, Professor.
Hi, my name is Ana Victoria Chavez. I'm a first-year undergraduate student at the University of San Diego and one of the office assistants in the Center for Cultural Development. It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker of the evening, Roy L. Brooks, JD, Warren Distinguished Professor of Law. I'm going to read the first 2 paragraphs of his biography, and his full bio can be found in the program by scanning a QR code. Even though I am just reading the first 2 paragraphs, this does not take away from his incredible, long, and impressive history of scholarship, activism, and teaching. Professor Brooks has earned the rank of university professor twice. He is a graduate of Yale Law School, where he served as an editor of the Yale Law Journal. After law school, Professor Brooks clerked for a federal judge and practiced corporate law on Wall Street before being recruited to University of San Diego in 1979 by then Provost Sister Sally Furey. The law school faculty awarded him tenure after his 2nd year of teaching. Professor Brooks has taught corporations, corporate finance, securities regulation, legal writing, civil procedure, civil process, and employment discrimination. Currently, he teaches jurisprudence, civil rights theory, international human rights, reparations, and discrimination law and diversity. Professor Brooks is the author of well over 100 articles and more than 20 books, monographs, casebooks, a textbook, and an anthology, including Integration or Separation, a Strategy for Racial Equality, published by Harvard University Press, Atonement and Forgiveness, a New Model for Black Reparations, published by University of California Press, Racial Justice in the Age of Obama, published by Princeton University Press, The Law of Discrimination, Cases and Perspectives with Gilbert Carrasco and Michael Selmy, published by LexisNexis. Diversity Judgments, Democratizing Judicial Legitimacy, published by Cambridge University Press, and The Racial Glass Ceiling, Subordination in American Law and Culture, published by Yale University Press. Professor Brooks has received 3 National Book Awards, USD Law School's Thorsness Prize for Excellence in Scholarship 4 times, and its Thorsness Prize for Excellence in Teaching 3 times. He has also received several awards for his service in support of civil and human rights, including the Thurgood Marshall Award and the Virgil Hawkins Award. He has also served as a member of a presidential commission, and the Library of Congress recognizes Professor Brooks as a distinguished scholar, both in the United States and internationally. Now, I would like to welcome Professor Brooks to the stage.
Thanks. I'll get up here. Thank you, Ms. Chavez, for a wonderful introduction. And I want to thank Provost Dixon Reeves and Nicole Turner for including students in this event. I think that's very important to get students. Ms. Chavez is only a freshman. Wow. And I also want to thank you and Nicole Turner for organizing this lecture series and for inviting me to give what will be my final public lecture. I was telling some people beforehand that I think it was 2004, I gave 26 public lectures around the world. And so I was constantly on the go. And when I think back at that, it exhausts me. And I also want to acknowledge President Harris and Dr. Baker and Dean Shapiro, and thank you really for encouraging and facilitating original scholarship at USD. I think that's important, and that actually promotes the vision that Sister Sally Furey had, and I'll speak about that. And I want to thank you also for teaching the community that, the USD community, that academic excellence and kindness can coexist. You know, they're not mutually exclusive. It's all right to be nice. if you are, and also to strive for academic excellence. And also, and I'm not a political person, but I'll make this statement. Also, I think it's important that you show us that character still matters at USD, despite the fact that this sort of transactional environment has been thrust upon us this year. Character still matters. So thank you for that. And then finally, I do want to thank Dean Shapiro and Professor Margaret Dalton, the former Vice Dean of the law school, for your incredible support and guidance during my illness. It was great. I don't want to get too emotional, but that was just fantastic that you came to my aid. Okay, so what I'm going to try to do today is to just sort of talk about this legacy that people were talking about. You know, I didn't know I had a legacy until some scholars and some writers began to call me and start digging into my history. And I said, what the hell is going on here? I didn't know it. But I began to think about the questions that people have been asking me for at least the last 2 years. And the one that comes up mostly is, what are the emotions and motivations that have given shape to your scholarship and your teaching? And as I said, I really haven't thought about that. I don't pay really much attention to the sort of things I do. I mean, I haven't even been very good about updating the law school website about, you know, my books and my articles. I mean, I'll get around to doing that, I suppose, but I just don't focus on those sorts of things. But when I think about the question, it's clear to me that my personal experiences, especially the interactions I've had with individuals, have sort of cultivated my scholarship, my teaching, my concern for people and social justice, and especially with people like Justice Thurgood Marshall. And Justice Marshall was known as Mr. Civil Rights, and I show a video of that in one of my classes of Mr. Civil Rights and how he escaped being lynched any number of times in the South, fighting for the civil rights of African Americans. And before he became the first African American justice of the Supreme Court, he was known as Mr. Civil Rights. And as a civil rights lawyer, Justice Marshall, you know, the two are really sort of the same. When you read books by Justice Brennan about how Justice Marshall had given him the sort of information he needed to create what is known as a modern theory of judicial review. But, you know, Justice Marshall had a tremendous impact on my life. And of course, he was the lawyer who led the litigation team that claimed victory in a case that even conservative Justice Kavanaugh today calls the most important case that the Supreme Court ever decided, and that's Brown versus Board of Education. Now, Marshall, the lawyer, was such an iconic figure in the social justice movement that Justice Ruth Ginsburg was called the Thurgood Marshall of the women's rights movement for the cases on gender equality that she won as a civil rights lawyer. Now, I first met Justice Marshall when I was in my 20s. My wife and I accompanied the judge for whom I was clerking to Washington, D.C. for a reception that was being hosted by Justice Marshall. As my wife and I approached Justice Marshall, who was standing in the receiving line, I introduced myself and my wife. And I said, Justice Marshall. I introduced myself, and I said, Justice Marshall, this is my wife. Before I can say anything else, he shot back, he says, well, son, don't blame me. I didn't tell you to marry her. Justice Marshall's diminutive wife, Cecilia, I had forgotten about that until Cecilia mentioned it to me back, it was 2004 when I was in Washington, D.C., and I was given a speech there on the 50th anniversary of Brown versus Board of Education. She reminded me of that. But so she came up to me and my wife, grabbed our arms and said, your judge, he was just joking, your judge got him to do that. You know? So, but that unsettling event turned into a 15-minute private conversation that I had with the good justice. And he kindly offered me a glass of Wild Turkey whiskey we was drinking. I politely declined. Didn't know what it was anyway. But he also offered me a wealth of professional advice, which I gladly accepted. More than Justice Marshall and other civil rights icons, my upbringing and my education cultivated my scholarship, my teaching, my appreciation for the rights of others, social justice. I grew up in New Haven, Connecticut, where the regional accent blends elements of native Boston and New York, you know, so people sort of know you're from Connecticut because of the way you talk. I was raised in a middle-class neighborhood just 3 miles from Yale University, which heavily influenced the neighborhood's culture. My neighborhood was wonderfully diverse. People from different racial groups lived together. The Black families were as wealthy or as poor as the other families, the Italians, the Jewish families, the Portuguese, and those whose ancestors came over on the Mayflower. We were all in it together. The Black parents identified as Democrats and Republicans, Lincoln Republicans, I would say today, not mega conservatives. And as I have written on one occasion, quote, in this environment, I learned human nature in all its aspects, the well springs of human behavior, the attractions and dislikes that influence how people behave. And I really did. I was also taught a valuable lesson in terms of what one should do with one's life. So I was told that one should never use money as a measurement of wealth. And that allowed me to leave Cravath, Swaine and Moore and all that money behind. I've remembered that. And education was highly valued in my neighborhood. And so most of the kids went to college. Some of them went to the prestigious New England prep schools. I did not. In college, my best friends were my professors, hands down, absolutely. Other than my wife, my best friends were my professors. They were highly intellectual, and they prepared me to become a scholar. They guided me through an interdisciplinary curriculum because in 1969, they believed that such an education was crucial for the scholar of the future. So I double majored in history and philosophy, and I minored in political science and sociology and anthropology. I was lucky because I was the only undergraduate student invited to brown bag faculty presentations in philosophy and political science, which allowed me to observe firsthand how scholars interact and how scholarship gets made. J.J. Kupperman was my faculty advisor in philosophy. Now, J.J. Kupperman is famous before he even got out of high school or even middle school, because when he was a youngster, he was known as the smartest of the whiz kids who appeared on quiz radio in the late 1940s. He passed away a few years ago, but I still communicate with his wife, who retired as a renowned scholar of American colonial history. Professor Kupperman was as sweet as he was smart. He taught me something that I had already understood from my upbringing on Munson Street in New Haven, Connecticut, and that is this, that truth comes from different sources. It's not just one source of truth. That is a big reason why I emphasize diverse framings in my scholarship, and also in the way I construct my classes. My professors gave me a lot of space. They gave me space, which is why I'm so happy that we have young people, undergraduates involved in these kinds of events, because my professors gave me space to write an article. I was a sophomore, to write an article, and I got academic credit for it. And their investment in me paid off because the article was actually published by an academic journal before I graduated. My professors were also instrumental in my selection to the President's Bicentennial Commission, which gave me the opportunity to interact with many senators, especially the senators from Massachusetts, which was Senator Brooke, who was a Black Republican, and Senator Ted Kennedy, who was a Democrat. Next year, of course, the nation will celebrate its 250th anniversary, the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. My experience as one of three students on the Presidential Bicentennial Commission taught me a valuable lesson that paid off big time 3 decades later. In 2005, when I was teaching at USD, I was in Connecticut to receive an award. After the event, a group of political influencers invited me to consider running for the governorship of Connecticut, which was still considered to be my home state. They had a big pot of money, and they said, all you got to do is say yes. I said no. Quickly. My experience on the Bicentennial Commission greatly diminished my taste for politics. After college, I applied to law school and was fortunate to be accepted at a number of very good law schools. But I really wanted to teach philosophy. I wanted to teach philosophy at a college or university. Didn't really want to go to law school. Such was the impact that J.J. Kupperman on my life. I decided, however, to attend Yale because from the time I can remember, I was maybe 5 years old, everybody in my family was telling me I'm going to be a lawyer. So I said, well, I better go to law school then. So I went to Yale. There's a joke about Yale, Harvard, and all, and about how much the students at Yale really learned the law. I won't say it here, but some people say, well, yeah, that's probably why you went to Yale, but I won't say it. There are a number of things I know which I won't say. But I decided to go to Yale with the intention of staying only 1 year and then to begin my fellowship in Harvard's PhD program in analytic philosophy. Harvard said that they would defer my fellowship for 1 year. However, an event took place at Yale that changed the course of my professional life and reaffirmed the principle that I had imbibed growing up in my racially diverse neighborhood. I was verbally assertive in my classes. They called me Babylon Brooke. It was a style that I learned from attending the faculty presentations in college. before the first semester grades were posted, my torch professor called me into his office. So I thought, oh, heck, I probably failed his exam. Perhaps demonstrating that he, Robert Bork, and the other conservative professors on the faculty have been correct all along. They were instrumental in eliminating Yale's affirmative action program 2 years before I arrived there, thus limiting, of course, the number of students of color, particularly Black students, admitted to Yale Law School. I anticipated my professor saying, see, we shouldn't have any Black students here at Yale. Oh, it's over your head. But that's not what happened. He said, Mr. Brooks, come in, take a seat. So what are you going to do with your law degree? And I said, well, I'm not going to get a law degree. I'm just here for 1 year. And he said, and I said, I want to teach philosophy. He says, you don't want to do that. He says, you want to teach law. And he gave me some compelling reasons why, and I'm not going to say what they are, get in trouble. He gave me some compelling reasons why I should teach law, okay? This person, who was not, we didn't think he was on our side, we didn't like him. None of the Black students liked him. And so and not only that, what he did is he suggested what I should do to position myself to get a job as a legal academic. For example, he said that what you want to do is you want to get on the law journal. As you know, Professor Shapiro was the editor-in-chief of the Yale Law Journal. And I was planning to do that. I was going to try to get on the law journal before I left. And in fact, I became the first member of my class to be selected to the Yale Law Journal. Sam Alito, now Justice Alito, was the second in the class to be so selected. Now, other professors offered valuable advice. Two of them advised me to publish my law journal submission in an outside law review where it would be treated as an article rather than at the Yale Law Journal, where it could only be published as a comment. And an article, but not a comment, would count towards tenure when I was a law professor, they told me, and that was true. And my piece was, in fact, published in the Harvard Journal of International Law. Another professor bluntly advised me to clerk for a Black judge so that I could learn how to protect myself in what he considered to be a racist profession as well as a racist society. This is back in the early 70s. That person was white and the former dean of the Yale Law School. I did, in fact, clerk for a Black federal judge who was a Republican, just like some of the Black fathers on Munson Street. And like them, he was a staunch supporter of civil rights, including affirmative action. Many people forget that the Republicans back in the late 60s in mid-60s, like Edward Dirksen, supported the civil rights legislation. It's not like the Republicans today, at least, the Republicans today who back then would be considered today to be the Lincoln Republicans. Now, I also have found time to write a law review article while I was clerking, and which was published at the Cornell Law Journal. And I managed to spend time with the liberal Black federal appellate judges. One was William H. Hastie, who was the first Black person appointed to the federal bench. And then there was the larger-than-life A. Leon Higginbotham, who actually gave the commencement address out here at our law school. I came in on Saturdays to spend time with Judge Higginbotham and working with him on his scholarship. After I became a scholar myself, I dedicated one of my books to him. Higginbotham and my judge were close friends, and they were close friends for a number of years. They grew up together, even though they were appointed to the bench by a Democratic and Republican president. One experience I had at Yale profoundly impacted the way I look at the world, the way I do scholarship, teaching, and it's sort of legendary. People talk about it. I get asked questions about it all the time. A diverse group of my classmates met after dinner in the Yale Law School cafeteria, including the future conservative Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, the future Harvard Law School and critical race theorist pioneer Lani Guinier, and in the middle, the future President Bill Clinton, and of course, the future Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton, who was acknowledged to be the smartest person in the law school. Interesting thing is Bill Clinton hardly ever came to class. He didn't have to. He had Hillary's notes. So following dinner, we engaged in ongoing discussions about civil rights and social justice. We typically stayed at the table for long periods of time. I mean, the cafeteria was closed down, but we were still there. We refer to the table as the Black table for two reasons. One, the nature of the discussions and debates were about social justice, civil rights. Two, the Black students carried the discussion, not Bill or Hillary or any other person. So when some people talk about this, they assume that Bill and Hillary carried the discussion, but that's not the case. They did not carry the discussion. Thomas, yes, he was a big part of the driving force behind the discussions. We had a sense then that our theories, the theories that we were formulating, would eventually become national policy. And in fact, that is the case. The Supreme Court's current racial jurisprudence is framed in exactly the way that Thomas framed it when he talked about it at the Black table. And the flaws, I would say the flaws in the court's racial jurisprudence today are exactly what they were at the Black table 50 years ago. I respect the effort. I understand what they're trying to do, but they are absolutely wrong. Samuel Alito never took a seat at the Black table, but he routinely sat within earshot of the debates. And when we read in my classes, when we read his opinions in the race cases, it was clear that he was paying attention because he raises some very tough issues, okay? But what is so important is the fact that we were not hostile to anyone who sat at the Black table. We were, the table was racially, sexually, and ideologically diverse. The people who sat there were well-informed, and they all had the same intention, and that is social justice, racial justice. We were all going in the same direction. That was the critical point. And I honestly can say that most of us have remained friends throughout the years. I've been to Thomas's chambers, and he's sent me a handwritten letter when my first wife passed away some 20 years ago. He remembered. Lani Guinier, before she died, she hovered over me like a big sister, urging me to build a life outside of my work. She says, "You're working too much." which I'm trying to do something about that. Next week I'm taking off a month or so. The conservative students at the table had no dearth of William F. Buckley moments when he kicked the John Birch Society out of the conservative movement that he had established. The liberal and progressive students followed suit and openly condemned the burn baby burn types who dare to march under their banner. That was important because we all felt that what we are doing here is so important. We don't have time for this foolishness. That was critically important. Now, in some of my books, I sort of start off in the preface with some discussion of the Black table. And that has prompted some scholars to take note of the significance of the Black table. So one scholar says, quote, Professor Brooks's reference to the Black table serves as a metaphor for the intellectual rigor and respectful disagreement that Brooks advocates throughout his works. And that is my ambition. I want people to disagree in a respectful manner. I want people to do the work, do the homework, to come in well-informed. So after graduating from law school, I went to I clerked, and then I went to Cravath, Swaine & Moore. I went to Wall Street to work. And Cravath recently celebrated its 200th anniversary, and it is recognized as a pioneer in the development of corporate law practice among the big law firms. Lawyers often want to know, what was it like working at Cravath? Well, I tell them that it was quite a heady experience working with so many really smart people and hardworking people. They were smart and hardworking. They all did outstanding work on complex corporate deals. Sometimes these deals require that you put in 26-hour or bill, not that you bill 26-hour days, so you're there for longer than 26 hours, but that's what you're billing at. And I had a wonderful secretary, and we still stay in touch. I learned so much about the international finance system that I really thought that I could be president of the United States. I felt we'll put it this way, I felt qualified to be. Unfortunately, the downside was my commute. I had to split the difference between my wife, who worked in Pennsylvania, so we lived in Princeton, New Jersey, Princeton Junction. I had a 4-hour commute every day, round trip. Yeah, and we'd come in, go in under the Hudson River, from Princeton Junction, go into the World Trade Center, and you go up about 3 long flights of escalators, and then you walk over to Wall Street. Now, Sister Sally, as we call her, who was the legendary provost at USD, she came to my office at Cravath to recruit me at 1 Chase Manhattan Plaza on the 56th floor. David Rockefeller, who was the chairperson of Chase Manhattan Bank, was there, but he had his own separate elevator. Nobody can go into it. But so she came, and this was her first time in the Big Apple. Yet she rented a car, whereas most people would take a taxi cab. There was no GPS at this time. So it was only through divine intervention that she was able to navigate her way through in a safe manner through all this traffic. And she took me to dinner, where we talked about the importance of building the academic reputation of USD through scholarship. She had a glass of wine, Blue Nun, which I thought was quite appropriate. I don't recall how many glasses she had. I know she had at least one glass. She was something, I'll tell you. She was so I interviewed at the law school. I received an offer, and I arrived as the only Black professor in the entire university. I wrote up a storm, mainly in the area of my law practice, which was corporate finance, and I received tenure after 2 years of teaching. The best part of my experience at USD can be summed up in one word: students. Students, and I got to be careful because I get emotional when I talk about my students and some of the things that they've done. I really have to be careful about that. But it almost did not start out that way. Before the first day of classes, I was informed that one of my students in my civil procedure class, I had not taught a law class, it was my first day, my first class, before I'm walking in, and I get stopped by one of my colleagues saying, "Did you know that so-and-so announced to the dean that he did not want to take your class because you were Black?" Ooh. I'm going, you can wait to after class to tell me that, I guess, but the dean told him to stay in my class or, quote, "get the hell out of this law school." Those are the dean's words. This student stayed in my class and subsequently took every class that I taught. He also copied the mustache that I was wearing at the time. And after graduating from law school, he named his first child after me, a girl spelled R-O-I. Yeah, students. I am truly at a loss of words to express my gratitude to my students, my research assistants. They not only met the high standards that I set, including, I don't allow any computers, cell phones in my classes. I want students to engage each other, not their devices. By the way, look at what's happening at Harvard. They're talking about doing away with computers and cell phones in the class because all the students are doing is this. And the students accept that. Plus, they accept having to write a commentary on the assigned material before class. As one of my students says, "Professor Brooks, this is a bit of a grind." I said, "I know it is, but it enriches the discussion. It enriches the discussion." But the students have been, even after graduation, they have been so wonderful. I mean, I don't deserve it. I really don't. After my, surgery a couple of years ago, two of my former students, and I think I see them in the back there, they were practicing law full time, and they volunteered to back up my teaching because I didn't know if I had the energy to go through an entire semester, or let alone sort of an entire class. And they were there through the entire semester. They read through the commentaries, and I mean, I just wow, how do you? And I've had several students interrupt my classes, and they brought cookies in on my birthday. I don't know how they knew when my birthday was, but they got the information. They were there, and I'm very happy. Really, I don't deserve that. I really don't. When during the COVID, when we were doing Zoom classes, I had students, before I came in, I noticed that the podium was always wet. And I asked, "What's going on?" And they said, "Well, we're wiping it down." And they also made sure that all the students had masks, that they were covered up. And the students who were doing this were Federalist Society students. I mean, I can go on, really. I can go on and on. my research assistants. I wanted to bring here with one of the students, Ms. Finley, her research, which is, I don't know, maybe 500, 800 pages. I don't know. It's a big binder which supports a 20-page chapter. Okay, so I make sure I get, because I want to know everything, so I can get it right. You know, but I do have students who act up once in a while. So for example, a couple years ago, I had a student who blurted out, we were discussing the case on police brutality, and he says, he blurted out, didn't ask him the question, he just blurted out. Well, everybody knows that Black people commit more crimes than white people. So, you know, in my office after class, I said, where'd you get that from? He said, Fox News. So I said, well, if you're litigating in court, do you think that that's acceptable, admissible evidence, Fox News? So I asked him to do research and report back at the next class. He says, do I have to? I said, yes, I think this may affect your grade. And when I do in my course description, I always put in my, I want to give them notice. You got to give a fair notice and all. He came back and yes, yeah, my God, that's not the case. He cited like FBI statistics, for example, that shows that white on white crime and black on black crime are about the same percentages. I have students who will come to my office and say, you know, I was taught that Black people benefited from slavery. But that's the student I want in my class. That is the student I want in my class. And they learn not from me, but from their other students by the engagement, reading the material. My position has always been if you give people of probity and intelligence the same material, you know, and allow them to ask each other questions without feeling that someone's going to say, oh, you're a racist or you're a pig or something like that, but allow them to go back and forth. That's the beauty of the Socratic dialogue. You go back and forth, that they really sort of come out in the same way. Now, so some people will say, yeah, but then there's Clarence Thomas. No. Have you really listened to his arguments? I have. I disagree with them, but they are not bad arguments. And and I don't want to defend him. He doesn't need me to defend him, but I do point out in my books, in the articles, and especially the opinions that he writes. The student said, is that Clarence Thomas? Yes. He says, like in these cases involving, particularly when the Supreme Court was trying to break up historically Black colleges and universities, he says, in his concurrent opinion, he says, it never ceases to amaze me how the justices can think that anything that is Black is inferior. So again, I disagree with him, but I understand he's trying to go in the same direction that I'm going in. And I want him at the table because I want to discuss matters with him. I want to have this discussion with him. Well, okay, I mean, I could go on and all, but we're running really behind time. And we started late too. But this is the third time, they never go on time. But what I want to say is that, look, I am incredibly happy and blessed to have been part of this beautiful community of students, of administrators, of teachers, of scholars. Illness has forced me into retirement. And as I say to people, you know, I did not know about getting old. I mean, I heard about it, but I couldn't relate to it. I could not relate to it, you know, and my doctor was trying to get me to retire 10 years ago because he says, look, she's a gerontologist, and he says, look, know what's coming. And so I am forced into retirement. I wanted to go 50 years to compete with Bert, but it's not going to be the case. And so I thank you very much. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can we have one more round of applause, please? As he mentioned, we are running just a few minutes behind, but not too much. We are going to devote the full 15 minutes to Q&A. We have one of our students, Jesse, who will run the microphone. Please ask a question. Don't give a huge commentary. We know that a lot of you want to talk about your relationship with him. You can do that in the reception. We want to make sure that people get questions. And we also want to make sure that our students have an opportunity to ask questions. And so, Isaiah, our guest, I want to make sure that somehow, sometime before this is over, you make sure that you get an opportunity to meet Professor Brooks. And so think of a question. All right. Anyone?
So, hi, Professor Brooks. So just a question, because I'm curious, and I think probably some others in the audience are as well. You talked about your dinner or lunch with Sister Fury. What was it that she said that convinced you to leave all those millions of dollars behind at Corvath and come here?
Well, actually, is this on? Can you hear me? Good. Yeah. Actually, I was going to leave anyway because I had an offer to teach at Columbia Law School. And she came out at the right time. It was, and she asked me out at the right time. I came out, I've never been to California at that time. And so I came out, it was like February, it was a blizzard back in New York City, overcoat and all. And I think it was Ed Urson who met me at this time you could walk on the tarmac. And he had on his shorts, his flip-flops, and his Hawaiian shirt. I said, wow, I didn't know this. So, and I thought that I would give it a try. Now, I should say this, I did come out, and then I won't mention names, but a famous, federal judge came out after me and said, what the hell are you doing out here? Wanted me to go back east because he said I had a responsibility to the cause, and I should, that sort of thing. But, I'm pretty, my own person, and I decided, and I had good, I like sister. There was something about her, to say she was heavenly, but she, but the fact that she came into New York with a car, And then there was something innocent because she drove us up 6th Avenue to the restaurant. She had the restaurant picked out. No, she drove us. She parked on Wall Street. I don't know how she found parking. And she came and got her. And then she said, "Well, as we were going, she says, Maya, do people live in all these buildings?" I said, "Yes." There was something innocent about that comment. I came here, because I wanted to be part of something new. I wanted to be part of the building process. I didn't realize it was going to be so hard at the beginning. As people know, I left here after 10 years in protest because the faculty couldn't find a, quote, qualified Black person on the faculty. I was the only one on. And then when I left, they did hire two women of color, and Sister Fury told me I got to come back to help them get tenure. The odd thing is that when I left here, I accepted a tenure position at the University of Minnesota Law School, which is a great institution, and I also had tenure here because Sister Fury refused to accept my letter of resignation. That's how she was. You have to see her. She was a tough lady. So there was just something about her. I said, yeah, I was not going to come out, because I was very busy and did not want to come out to spend a couple of days out here. But I decided to do so because she was just a very special person. Absolutely. Oh, I saw my. Oh, Miss Isaacs, this is one of my star students. Yeah. Before you, I can tell you, we were in my basically international human rights course, and you had to do a paper, and the students had to give their papers the last day. We had to critique it and all. And she gave a paper. What was the topic? Do you remember? Female
genital mutilation.
Yeah, and you're focusing on Egypt. And she did the research and all. And there was not a dry eye in the classroom when she gave that. Just sort of this is blessed with this type of a person. Yes.
And you changed my life because I came to this law school. I know we're not supposed to comment, but just one little one. I came to the law school thinking, okay, I have to go into corporate because that's what law students do. They think of going to the big firm. But my heart was in international human rights law. And you allowed me to think that I can have another option, that there was another future for me and that it was still going to be bright no matter what everyone said. And so I want to thank you for that and ask you, why did you choose to teach international human rights law?
Well, a number of reasons. One was because my first law review article was on international human rights, which was published by the Harvard Journal of International Law. But then, and in that course, we really focused a lot on atrocities. So when I think it was like 1998, I hadn't talked about the editors. I mean, so many wonderful, bright editors at the academic presses around the world that I became very good friends with and written letters of recommendation for them and all. Well, I was asked by the editor of NYU Law Review, a young editor who has since become like he was the head of Oxford University Press, and now this year he just became the head of Yale University Press. He asked me if I would do a book on international human rights focusing on atrocities. He had the title set up. The title was When Sorry Isn't Enough, okay? And so he said, I want you to write around that. And I had thought, well, I don't want to do that, and focusing on, I knew something about reparations and all because I got into this area of human rights basically as a law professor in social justice, I should say, because Professor Bicker, who was the leading tax scholar of his generation when I was a law student at Yale, he came out here, gave a commencement address, pulled me inside. I was doing corporations and corporate finances. He says, you're not going to make an impact on society doing that sort of thing. You get rich, but, with consulting work, but you're not going to. So, and he himself, even though he was a tax scholar, when I was in law school, he publishes a book which was a seminal treatise on reparations called The Case for Black Reparations. So that got me into the area there. But in 1998, the editor at NYU wanted me to do this book, and I don't want to do it. And he says, I wanted you to do it from an international perspective, and I want you to meet a comfort woman. I said, a what? I know what that was. So these are the women who were sexually enslaved by the Japanese Imperial Army during the Second World War. And they were seeking redress. So I went to Chicago. He got a ticket for me to go to Chicago. Went to Chicago. I met a comfort woman from Korea. We were in the lobby of the hotel. There was an interpreter, and I told him, stop. I got it. I get it. And so that did it. And haven't said this, but over the years, internationally, I've done a lot of things. And so I've marched with the Comfort Women in protest in front of the South Korean embassy in Japan. When I was in Poland to give a paper, the U.S. ambassador came to my lecture and then asked me to dinner afterwards. And he told me an incredible story. He said that during the Revolutionary War, Polish soldiers fought on the side of the colonists. And at the end of the war, George Washington offered them slaves in compensation for their military service. They turned him down and said, we did not fight for liberty to deny liberty to someone else. It was an incredible story. And so there's a lot of that in international human rights. And it just sort of resonated with me. And I've been fortunate enough to have great students like yourself and us. And really the amount of work I'm asking students to do, and without their computers, no computers, without their smartphones, it's just incredible that they're willing to do it. Yeah, so that's why it was a slow process. Yeah. Thank you.
Good evening, Professor. I think many folks think that scholarship is reserved for academics, but I don't believe that, and I know you don't believe it. So could you speak to the value of engaging in scholarship, writing scholarship for non-professors, non-academics?
Yeah, a scholar is anyone who is committed to getting it right, and willing to go through the process of getting it right, like the research, the reflection with other people. It's so important to talk to someone who doesn't think like you. That is just so incredibly important because it allows you to see things that you did not see. It allows you to get confirmation on your own position because the opposition is so weak. Although it is important, I think that you want to have the best arguments and not the worst arguments. So, for example, one book that I wrote was published by Harvard University Press. And in it, I wrote I said in the preface that I'm writing about a theory involving racial justice that I disagree with. But I think the theory has been theorized, and we haven't gotten the best of it. So I went back to the Tocqueville's Democracy in America, and then even further back to Jefferson's Notes on the State of Virginia to shore it up. And even there, I still disagreed with it. But I didn't have to be an academic to do that. I mean, there's a lot of good, quote, scholarship done by, quote, non-scholars, by individuals who are not associated with any universities. And I see that over and over again, and I think it's important. Again, this goes back to Professor Kupferman's thesis, and that is that, knowledge and truth comes from different sources. All done? Ready for some food?
Hi, Professor Brooks. You've been teaching for 47 years, and from how you talk about your students, it's clear that you love teaching and you wanted to teach philosophy. I'm curious, what drew you to teaching? What made you love it?
Well, because I love learning, period. Because I consider a professor to be a professional student. That's what it means in my mind, a professor. You're a professional student. I love the academic life. I love learning. So it was sort of easy for me to do that. Also, I was, my professors, throughout my entire educational experience, they have been so supportive of me, just so incredibly supportive of me. And I wanted to give something back, One reason that I've stayed at USD, I've had offers to go other places, is really because of the students. I mean, they're just so damn good. They really are. You give them, and I don't like when people bash our students. I'm sorry. Because there's some students, who don't do the work and all, and you got to get on them. And you can't be afraid that they're going to write you up or say nasty things about, there's a whole class that you have to consider. And I really do like our students. They're bright. They are. We had a dean here back in the 1980s who was from an East Coast school, and he had really a snotty attitude toward our students and all. And in my civil procedure class, this was the second semester, I had my students argue the cases. One case in particular was Erie versus Tompkins, a very difficult case. I was on him over and over again. You got to come to my class. You got to come to my class. Got to come to class. He came in, and after class, he says, those are some of the brightest students that I've seen. And there's one student in particular, I'm going to mention his name because his wife is here, Mike Ryder. He says he's one of the brightest students that I've ever seen. Is that Ryder back there? Mike, hey. I'm sorry, I didn't know you were there. If I had known you were there, I would not have mentioned your name. And they really are good, but you give them the information. It's sort of like the student who thought, well, everybody knows Black people commit more crimes than whites. Yeah, you don't knock this person off as, quote, racist. No student is racist. They're trying to learn. And so what you do is you give them an exercise that will allow them to self-discover. That's what you have to do, And I've had good professors throughout my life, and my goodness, this professor at Yale, I wouldn't be here today. Really, I would be, maybe I'd be in the undergrad school, I don't know, but not in the law school. But he stepped in on his own, as we call him, law sui sponte, on his own motion. I didn't ask him, he butted in. And he said, he was very, you don't want to do that. This is what you want to do. And so, he just fed into my natural instinct.
Good evening, Isaiah from San Diego City College. With being a giant that sat amongst so many giants, what has kept you grounded in your profession to teach students?
What has kept me grounded?
Yes.
Because I don't take myself very seriously. This is all nice and all, but really, I really care about how I treat other people. And frankly, when you get toward the end of your life, that's all that matters, I'm focused on other people. Not myself so much. I want this to be a better world. That was a big lesson growing up on Munson Street. And it was also the influence of Yale on our community. What you want to do is to use whatever talents you have to make this a better world, to improve the human condition. So I don't know. I spend most of my time in front of my computer in my study at home, or reading books of all types to try to improve my understanding of law and of the subtext of law, which is really what philosophy and sociology and all that is. And that's what my focus is on. I told one interviewer the other day, he says, well, do you consider yourself to be successful? I said, hell no, because I haven't been able to change anything. I mean, it hurts me tremendously when I see a homeless person or somebody who has mistreated a child. I mean, I ask, why is that? Why do we have that? Same thing when my first wife passed away. What's with that? So I'm more concerned about that, about the world in which we live. And it hurts me tremendously to see pain and suffering in this world. I'm going through that a lot now. And my doctor says I should be focused on, you should focus on yourself. But I'm concerned about the level of pain and ugliness in this world that just, it just bothers me to no end. And that's what I'm more concerned about than anything else. Yeah.
So you're at San Diego City College. Consider the University of San Diego. I'm just saying.
Well, it's been an honor to just sit here and listen to you. I must say, I'm thrilled to death to have had the opportunity to hear what you had to say. And as I was contemplating that you've written so many books, was there one that particularly challenged you, or one that you thought, this is the one that's going to stay with me forever? And then finally, with so much going on in our country right now, is there something else that you want to say in a book?
There's something else that I better not say. Yeah. No, I can tell you that the easiest book to write was The Racial Glass Ceiling. As a matter of fact, I met with the editor. I was in New Haven at the time, met with the editor, and literally on a napkin, the contract was made. Yeah. The hardest book to write was the diversity judgment book, because there's so much legal theory involved that I had to straighten out in my own mind. And the editor kept wanting more and more and more, and he got more, and he knew I had it. I didn't know that I had it. But my kids think that that's why my health is the way it is, because it was such a hard book to write. It was such a hard book to write. And I'm so happy that, I had deans in the law school who allowed me to go through different versions of it. So I got it, and they said, oh, no, I don't have it. I got it. And then I said, oh my God, my editor wants me to do this and that. So that was a hard book to write. Really, it took a lot out of me. And so I don't know if I have a favorite one. It's sort of like, I guess there's some this interviewer asked me, well, do you have a favorite student? I said, they're all my favorite students. Same with my books. They're all my favorite books. Virginia, do I stay here?
Stay there for one moment. I'm verklempt. I had asked for a Kleenex today during this lecture. I'm inspired, and Roy, you've been more than kind to me and more than kind to our colleagues here on campus. The words that come to mind, I had a speech, but I'm just going to take some notes that I wrote during this that describe you: courageous, inspirational, a pioneer, legal scholar, a giant in the field. You did become a philosopher, after all. Lover of our students, a model for teaching, and our model of scholarship, of teacher scholars. Dare I say, a national treasure. And I think back, as an administrator, you sometimes wonder if you have any impact at all on what is the purpose of being an administrator? And many of us ask that question. And I think back to Mother Rosalie Hill and her beauty, truth, and goodness quote. That's a Greek belief for this university, who then hires Sister Sally Fury, who then has the courage and the wisdom to travel. And it tells me something as an administrator. You want great faculty, you have to go out and get them. You have to do something, you have to care enough about your institution to do that. And then think of the ripple effect of bringing this prolific scholar to our campus. Our law school, thanks to many great scholars at the law school, is one of the top 30 in the country. They're being referenced by other law professionals and people who are writing in the field. And a great part of that is because of you. And I think about back in the 90s or something, where they had the quote about Michael Jordan, be like Mike. And I think if we think about what we want and who we seek to be teacher scholars on this campus, we should say, be like Roy. I mean, that's really all we have to say. That's what we have to look for. So we have a completely inadequate gift for you. We have a small token, and Roy, this will go on. This lecture series is going to be here forever, and in honor of such a wonderful and great human being. I mean, the way you take people aside and make us all feel that we belong here. And so when we talk about our vision for the future, it's almost as if it was written by Professor Brooks. To confront humanity's challenges, to foster peace, to work for justice, and to lead with love. He's a living example and living embodiment of that. Roy, God bless you, and thank you for all your years of service to this institution.